Yo, Joburg, everybody. It's episode 216 of GI Joburg. My name is Steve. I'm joined by my buddies Paul and Rob. Hey, Paul and Rob.
Hello, Stephen and Rob.
Hey, Stephen and Paul.
And hello to our live studio audience from the Berg Force. Yeah. So, a week ago, Robert dropped the bombshell that he's gone down the rabbit hole of the Blood for the Baron website and all the treasures that lie in wait there. If those of you are Joe fans and do not know about Blood for the Baron, it is basically the starting point of your voyage of discovery into all that is Action Force. GI Joe from across the pond. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Blood for the Baron has toys, it has comic books, it has miscellaneous paraphernalia. It is the English equivalent of yojo.com. Rest in peace, yojo.com. And along with this bombshell, Rob said that he had read the first story. So, original idea Steve comes up with episode 216 as a review of that first issue. So this will serve, hopefully, to satisfy the curiosities of GI Joburg fans who are also Action Force fans, and GI Joburg listeners who have never really dipped their toes, but should. Because if you're a stickler for all things Joe like me, this is a big nebulous hole in your knowledge and deserves to be filled.
Hell yeah, that's what holes are for. Gotta fill them up.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. But gentlemen, another week has passed. Here's to check in with you guys. What's new, Robbie?
Nothing much. What happened this week? Oh, we were still doing free comic book month at our comic book store because of COVID. We kind of spread it over a month like we did last year. So that's going pretty
comic
good.
Books for a whole month?
Well, you got to buy something to get the free comic, but still.
Yeah, free and ever free, is it? But
it's free enough, 4% free. You know, I'm just eating the free stuff.
Do you
Isn't
still
it
do
technically
giveaways?
like free comic book day and then leftovers for the month?
Well, we just didn't want to have to like shove everyone into the store, you know, on one day. So we're still giving them out for free, technically, basically. But it's just not to have to force everyone to come in on one day, and it gives everyone a chance to kind of like get free comic books.
Dude, free comic book day at your store was bittersweet for me always, because you guys had such great like giveaways, like freebies.
Oh, those were the best, yeah.
In order to enter the draw, you had to obviously buy something. So I would buy the cheapest garbage I could find just to get multiple choice. What am I saying? Multiple opportunities to go into this draw.
Yes.
But I never won a damn thing, you bastard. You would buy like one thing and
I'd
always
won.
won.
I think I won 2 years in a row, actually.
But for anyone wondering, this wasn't an inside job. Robert hadn't started working there just yet.
Yeah. This was years and years ago. And also, this is the 20th year of Free Comic Book Day. And I think, our shop has been doing it since the very start. So it's crazy to think it's been such a long time.
And you get those like guys that come in like super early. Like they're outside the shop already when you
they
get there.
absolutely love doing that. You know, getting the best deals before anyone else could. I saw 10% off. I'm definitely going to come in and grab that statue I've been looking at for years. But it's just cool to have an event going throughout the month. You know, it kind of encourages people to come in, and you just get to see people you haven't seen for a while.
There was a free comic book day a while ago when they did Walking Dead. The Walking Dead was big, and then they did like a reprint of the first issue of Walking Dead as a free comic book day thing. But apparently, there was something with it that made it like somewhat collectible or chase worthy. I don't know. And same with Kick-Ass. I remember there being like a thing, and geez, dude, everybody just wanted those issues. I remember that being like, some form of trauma.
Yeah, some people get very specific. They're like, oh, I want this free comic book. I don't want the other one, So I think they become as collectible as like any other kind of issues of comic books, really.
I personally also really loved that they did a reprint of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was cool. Like a while
that's
back,
neat.
yeah. So I got one of those because I mean it was there when it came in, and like
Ah.
you know our Tex was always cool with us. Our boss was always fine with us like grabbing a few or whatever. But he did sort of say, listen guys, if you're going to grab, please just grab 10 that you want, you know, because obviously we don't want you guys taking everything. And I mean, we were cool. There were only one or two of us that actually even got to 10 comic books. And then, you know, the rest of the team was like maybe one or two that they liked, and that was it. I personally used to also love all those sketchbooks that they used to do. Like, so I think Top Cow did like a sketchbook issue that had like sketches and whatever's by Dave Finch and all that. That was great. That kind of stuff was awesome. That was always sexy for me. But yeah, man, Free Comic Book Day is fun.
Paulie, how's your week been?
Oof, pretty good. Busy as usual, but that's not a bad thing. It's been good busy. But other than that, I did actually score something cool. I just don't want to reveal it right now, just because I haven't got it in my hands yet. But I bought some cool GI Joe stuff from a local guy. Again, because he decided he wanted to sell some more of his stuff, so I picked up a few nice items.
Why
there,
don't
so-
you want to reveal it?
Because I figured it'd be a nice surprise, and like I said, I wanted in my hand. But I will reveal one of them, and it's something that I've been wanting for a long time. Okay, I'll reveal two of them. One of them is yay! It's a ram cycle.
Ooh.
Yay!
Your first?
Yeah, the vintage one. No, yeah,
You never forget your first ram.
that's my first ram.
Mhm.
And something else that I've wanted for a freaking long time as well is a Cobra Claw, but like a vintage one. Because the one that they released during the modern era time, there was like a red one that they did as like a Walmart or Target exclusive. It's cool enough, but compared to the
No.
vintage, it's crap.
It's hot garbage. There's nothing to it. It's just an empty shell. It's
Yeah,
it's
it's-
lip service of the claw. It's the claw's
Yeah.
outline. Yeah.
And exactly, and I always thought, okay, that was great until you got a claw. You faithfully picked up a claw one day from my local comic shop.
Two. Hate to break it to
Two,
you.
sorry, two. And I don't know, when I saw that, I was like, no, damn it, I need to get one. And also, owning a Terradrome, it's great to have a claw because you can hang them on the Terradrome. So I'm very excited about the arrival of those. They should be on Monday or Tuesday. And then another small thing, I have mentioned this before, but a local Joe dealer, a guy that sometimes gets toys or whatever's, sort of, we were just chatting, and he asked me if I had an extra Norga hide helmet. If he's listening to this, you know who you are.
Norga
And I was
hide
like,
helmet.
I mean, a hat, Norga hide hat.
Just got an
hat.
extra one lying around.
I actually do, as it turns out. I do have one. I went to go and have a look, and we got into a chat, and he's like, yeah, no, he's just trying to help some guys find accessories and stuff. And I'm like, well, speaking of accessories, I would really like Low Light version 2's accessories. Do you know if anybody who's got them? And then he went and did like an eBay search, and he found them for super cheap, guys. Like $6.
Paul, you told the story a week ago.
I know, but it's still exciting. Anyway, that should be arriving soon as well with some other goodies. Yeah. So yeah.
Guys,
So
You know,
That's-
you know,
it's
1992
Joe stuff.
Duke,
yeah.
the one that rides the rocket launcher.
Yeah, I've
Is
seen them.
35 Aussie dollars too much?
I don't think so, because locally there's one for sale for about 450 rand, which I think is about more or less the same, isn't it?
Well, plus shipping. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if I was to pay 45 Aussie for it, it would be 450 rand. Okay. I just think to myself, you know, it's not a Duke that I would seek out unless I had no Duke to hand. You know, I have the classic grinning, maniacally 1983-84 mail-away Duke, but I don't have a Duke here, and this one's staring me in the face because it's got video game cred. You know.
Yeah, I
That
was
is
gonna
the
say.
if you want to have the characters, the playable characters from the rail-scrolling arcade game, that's the Duke, with red accents and all. He has a good gun. He has a good knife. He has a good helmet. The red is wild, but it was the 90s, so he will hold good company with the battle call Roadblock, with, I don't know, Dusty, Snake Eyes, all the wild boys from that era.
Wild boys.
Wild boys. Okay, I'll get it. I was looking for one a bit cheaper because I was gonna just toss the rocket launcher. So if I found an incomplete one with just the gun and the helmet, I'd be like pouncing on that. But bite the bullet. Why not?
There's another guy here locally selling some Street Fighter figures.
Ooh.
And
Do you not have a full collection?
I don't. I used to.
Boo.
But I don't. And after
for
watching
information on that, see our last podcast. They all met with the customizer's scalpel.
But watching Zaz's last episode of the Slaughterhouse, or the whole wrestling vibe, seeing Balrog Vega got me all excited for one again. So yeah, there are a few floating around. I'm currently talking to a gentleman about a Sagat and a Ken. So hopefully I can make that happen. He's here in Joburg, which is cool.
Sagat is excellent. That is a great figure.
Unique chest,
Ken,
unique
not so
torso
much.
as well.
But the Vega that Zazel used in that Slaughterhouse Wrestling Championship episode 2, check the link in the description below. I'm going to hype it one more time because it's awesome. That is a special one. I don't know where that's from. I think he said it was like an exclusive of some kind. But that is a good Vega. That is like screen accurate. Video game screen accurate, which is a hell of a lot better than the GI Joe Street Fighter series from 92. Or was it 93?
But the mask.
But,
he's got the mask on the claw.
And very time is that you were talking about Norgahide's hat because it's a great fit on Monkey Wrench, as it turns out.
It looks so cool.
Yeah, it looks great. Anywho, I didn't get any new shit, so if anyone else does, feel free to chime in.
I mean you in the comments, guys.
Crickets. No, you smooth criminals. Rob, Paul. Okay, that's a wow.
No, nothing new.
Blank slate for new shit. Gentlemen, what are you reading? What are you watching? What are you playing? Hit me with the good stuff.
Rob goes first.
Oh, Rob goes first. Ooh, okay.
Well, I'm still fervently playing Final Fantasy XIV, the online game. Getting much further with my many crafting jobs. Still struggling a bit, but it's going good overall. Otherwise, this week I've finally gotten back into Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
9-9.
It's seen the first 4 seasons. I usually watch it like over supper. So I've kind of gotten. I'm now on the 5th season. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know how many more seasons there are, but like the 5th season came out in 2017, and like it still feels like a very fresh show.
I dig it, dude. It's still
the
good.
humor is still great overall. I really enjoy it. Otherwise, I actually started, not to bring up Motu into this, but if someone's going to, it's going to be me or Paul. But I actually started watching the other He-Man animated series, the CGI.
From 2021.
The other one. So not
Yes.
He-Man Revelation, but the CGI version.
Oh, the new one for the kids.
A completely different version of He-Man. Yes, the one for the kids.
It's a bit Power Ranger.
Is there a toy line associated with it? Surely there must be.
I imagine there will be. I mean, I haven't seen any toys for it yet myself. I don't know if Paul's seen any.
There are toys.
They are.
I'm not. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say I kind of enjoyed it so far. I watched the first 3 episodes. It's kind of its own take on the He-Man mythos, and He-Man is still very much the center of attention. Unlike in Revelation, where he kind of seemed to be sidelined. And it's kind of like a cool futuristic version of Eternia, where it's more like technologically based, but there's also still a lot of magic, and the animation is actually pretty good overall so far. So I'm curious to keep going with it. I've watched 3 episodes, and yeah, I want to see where the rest of this goes.
We do have a comment in our section from Podcast from the Pit. Hey, another fellow podcaster in attendance. It's Casey who got some new shit. The Thunderclap. Holy heck. That's pretty major.
You don't see people getting those too often.
Well, Rob,
They're
reflecting
huge.
on your memories of the Thunderclap, do you remember this piece? Do you remember when we got it into our collection? Do you remember the games we had with it?
We had a lot of fun with it. I mean, you got it at the the Parrot toy shop, didn't you? I mean, it
Yes.
was a local
My
purchase. Yeah.
14th birthday. It was already backstocked by then. I mean, it was ancient.
Oh my shit!
But they still
Really?
had it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, I got it for my 14th. That and an Arctic Blast, and then I got enough cash monies on the big day at my party that we took a trip out. I think that the very same afternoon, to pick up the Sky Raven, which was like
That
for
was
a whole
an amazing
80
birthday, and they're
rand.
all sealed in box.
Yeah.
That was the
yeah.
great, and the boxes still looked fresh. It was like they'd just literally been put onto the shelves. I mean, and they must have been, because I think wherever they pull these things from, it's from like a big warehouse somewhere. That's how we could keep going there and keep finding stuff, you know?
But as I recall, this was like our Battlefield HQ. Like the Thunderclap, because we missed out on, the 1983 HQ, we missed out on the Rolling Thunder, the MCC, other things that were more suitable as like a nerve center. We just made the Thunderclap it. And it makes sense because it's got computer screens all over the place. It's got the detachable scout vehicles, which form an instant like perimeter. And it has a nice kind of internal space. If you wanted to not use it as a cannon, it could be just a bunker.
Yeah, basically. I
Missile
mean, it
launcher and
definitely
machine
was
gun.
the center of attention. Without any other kind of base, it was the biggest GI Joe thing we had, essentially.
I just remember loving loading it up with guys and just playing Convoy. That was the game. We were just driving from point A to point B, very sort of in character conversations happening amongst our guys, and that was it. Literally, that was the game. There was no action. It was always the potential that something could erupt, and that was almost
something
like,
might happen. That was more exciting than the actual action itself.
Hey, and I do recall at one point like it started to drizzle, and that was just so cool on that like smoky glass of the scout vehicles to have little speckles of light rain. So good. Anyways, Casey, enjoy that Thunderclap, man. It is a beaut. I saw your Instagram pics. Looks like you're on the hunt for a few missiles, but the vehicle itself looks immaculate. So, congratulations.
Radness.
Uh,
I love it
Radness.
when people get cool stuff.
Oh, Rob, I was thinking about something else about the way we used to play just the other day. Do you remember that I used to provide soundtrack? And I'm not talking about like taping music from a video game and then playing it back. That came later. But do you remember that
But you
in
still did
order
that.
to create a mood, I would like do like a or something like that. Like
I
little-
even remember that. Which means
It feels familiar. I'm pretty sure you must have done it.
I certainly did. And thinking back now, I was like secretly kind of sheepish about it, like embarrassed. Like, did you think that was stupid at the time?
No,
Like, or did
it
you kinda
adds
go with
something to it. It's like sound effects, but it's the music that kind of adds to the mood. I don't think I ever thought that was stupid.
Well, the
If I
reason
did, I would
ask
have
is
told you.
because... Thank you. No, but the reason I ask is because, like, in my mind, I was imagining like all the other instruments filling in, but I could only with my mouth produce like one melody or one kind of mood sound, and that's all that obviously you or Alistair were hearing. But if it worked, it worked. Fantastic. I do recall you kind of joining in on the fun a couple of times, Rob, primarily for comedic effect. But there was one instance in particular where I recall, like, instead of, well, just as a kind of a massive bank of computers for our chief baddie, we used my brother's hi-fi.
oh, cool.
And you could not refrain from having, I think it was Destro, and he was kind of like, pressing the gigantic play and pause buttons and whatnot. And you started to sing the tune. I like my music. I like my music. I like my music. I like my music. Do you remember that?
I do actually.
Amazing. good. Great comments that we've got in the live chat. Andrew's saying that he used to play Iron Maiden to set the stage. Now that's prescient because boy oh boy did like
Interesting.
metal become like the driver for like action movies. I mean, I'm thinking of like, okay, maybe it's not metal exactly, it's more kind of poppy, but like boy oh boy did Iron Man really like take on all of AC/DC's playlist.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
well,
no, for
you
sure.
did not say
Yeah.
AC/DC is poppy, did you?
Oh jeez.
I'm just saying. I'm
They're
not like this
poppy,
big
they're
diehard fan,
not
but I
pop
mean,
enough.
It's Akadaka.
Akadeka.
Yeah.
Love me a little Akadeka. You know, is it thunder or thunder?
After Christ, devil conquers. That's why you can't wear AC/DC shirts at my school during
Flip.
a Civies Day.
Paul, have you watched the latest Gundam series on Netflix?
The series as in Hathaway Flash or the...
Hathaway.
Yes. Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Okay.
I
Good.
haven't watched that yet.
I started
Oh,
watching Resident Evil. Is it Darkness?
Oh god.
Oh, are they animated Resident
Infinite-
Evil movies?
Yes, Infinite Darkness. I mean, it's just basically watching a Resident Evil cutscene. But I feel like it cuts in where I cut out on Resident Evil. That like, I played Resident Evil 2 to death, and that was it for me. So it's jumping right back into that. I think it's Leon and Claire and the events of the Raccoon City. I don't know, outbreak are kind of fresh in everyone's memories. So yeah, I feel like I haven't missed anything. That's handy. Also, Rick and Morty finished up. Rob, I know you were keeping current on that.
Oh,
Any
for
thoughts?
sure. The end of that season was really fantastic. I just love how like he's trying to constantly avoid or like get away from like canon stuff and like furthering like a bigger story. And then the entire episode is just trying to do that the entire time.
Bro, that whole season trolled me hard because only by the end of it, only by the final episode where they are finally furthering the canon, I'm like, geez, I'm actually genuinely moved by this episode, and that's what was missing for like the 8 previous episodes. Like, come on,
Yeah.
man. I don't want to see serialized, like, return to the status quo episodes. I want to see the story furthered. Like, Rick and Morty had a interesting plot line, and then for an entire season they just do one shots. Trolls.
Well, there was a few references like to a Birdman. There was a whole episode kind of focusing on trying to resurrect his friend Birdman, and you get to see a bit of his past. And then obviously the final episode of the season, you get an entire like info dump of like,
I've got to watch this
Rick's
show, man.
entire like origin story essentially.
I suppose, but I'm more interested in evil Morty.
What's
and,
coming next?
and
Yeah.
the Citadel. Like that was great. Wow, what an episode! What a season finale. I also, at the behest of my wife, watched Frozen 2, and that is
Oh, God.
all that needs to be said about
just let it go, Steven. Just let it go.
Let
Don't
it
worry about
go. Build a snowman. Get over it. Whatever.
Those are not the songs from the sequel, by the way.
I know.
For
Oh,
1,000 GI Joburg points, who can sing any line from Frozen 2? I dare you.
This is
Double
a trick. If you can sing it, you should lose 1,000 GI Joburg points.
Hey man, who knows how this game works? Maybe it's like the Mad Magazine game where the object is to lose points. So
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
I don't know any of the songs from that movie.
Okay, everybody take a shot.
Hey.
Wait, are we playing that? Okay.
I just
is
know
that
that
it
Would You Like to
for-
Fuck a Snowman song from the first one.
I don't think that's real.
Would you like to fuck a snowman?
Would you like to drink a snowball?
I think it's because we don't have kids. When I speak for Rob and myself, that's why we won't have it stuck in our heads. Steve, prepare yourself. You're going to
What?
know all the songs
You're
from
gonna
all
know
the
all
movies
the
soon
kids'
enough.
movies, yeah.
Hey man, I love watching her playing with my kid and having the tunes playing in the background. Because Kim, I mean, I might be the performer in the family, but she can sing, guys. She can sing, and so that's always a touching scene. So it piqued my interest, and I'm ashamed that it did because I really shouldn't have ventured off that precipice. Any hooch, if you got kids, you understand. If you got significant others that love Disney, you understand. If you yourself love Disney, you understand. So, whatever. I feel
Yeah,
no shame.
no hate for Disney or anything.
No,
But
obviously, no, never.
I mean, I suppose maybe I should go deep into this. I actually kind of hate Frozen because I love Tangled,
Ooh.
and I hate that Frozen got the amount of acclaim that it got when Tangled was actually a better movie.
Oh, Tangled is definitely much better.
Yeah, so I'm just being a bit of a animation sort of
Shots
nihilist.
fired. I'm interested
Yeah.
if there's a crossover of GI Joburg listenership and like Disney files, Disney
Uh-huh.
heads, mouse housers, whatever you call yourselves. So if you have a different opinion and say that Frozen rules and Tangled drools, scroll on down to the comment section and let Paul know why he's a
Yeah, let me hear your
tool.
thoughts. Um,
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've dwelt on this long enough. Gentlemen, blood for the Baron!
I keep on imagining
So-
him saying it like "Blood for the Baron," but that's me.
Well, there are more than a few interesting nuggets that we can pull out of issue 1, essentially, of the Action Force comic book. Have you guys both read this? I have to
Yes.
ask.
Have
No,
had the pleasure
absolutely.
of
Boys.
Battle Action
I've-
Force.
I've reread it.
Boys. Okay, so the cover kind of reminds me of well, it's a very old school approach. It's very text heavy. It's kind of like a newspaper poster. I don't know, something that's kind of advertising a tabloid or something. It's just very laden with information and text and stuff. It's like Baron Ironblood, the evil genius, plans to conquer the world. Pitched against him, the power of Action Force. Read, Action Man, Action Force. It's heavy on the copy, and I kind of like that. It's so old school.
It's very. It definitely. Yeah. It feels like there's. You can probably do an article in there to find out which. I don't know which Doctor Who like companion you are. I mean, it's from the 80s. I mean,
And,
More
and
likely
it's
to
got
be
Baron
friends.
Ironblood, the key antagonist, right on the cover. And funny you should say
Unmasked
Doctor
Novel.
No, but it feels like yes, unmasked. It does feel like he's kind of very much in the vein of Doctor No. Black gloves, the Ned Kelly style helmet, which I didn't know what Ned Kelly was until I came to Australia. Very fitting, but he was a outlaw, kind of the wild wests of Australia, who armored up with this kind of tin steel helmet, and obviously a lot of heavy body armor.
Tis but
and
a
it worked
scratch.
Yeah. Yes. Was that Monty Python?
Yeah.
yes. Holy
But
Grail.
gents, if you read on into the Action Force adventures, and if you really take this continuity to heart, when you see Baron Ironblood unmasked, guess who you're also seeing unmasked?
Cobra
Come on, it shouldn't
Commander.
be that. There we go, Robbie.
Yes.
Yeah. So in AF continuity, Baron Ironblood, well, when the toys get adopted by the UK, he drops his Ironblood persona and takes on the mirror face. Anyways, gents, I've spoken enough. What are your opening thoughts on this story?
Well, I have questions.
It is, of course, the debut story of Action Force. It's dated 1983, 4th of June 1983. This, of course, ran in its Battle Action Force format into 1986, and then became Action Force Weekly. They had just dozens and dozens of stories. I think, Rob, you said over 90?
Yeah, I think it's about 92-ish, or at least from what I can see from the website that we're sourcing these from.
Oh, yes. Big ups to Blood for the Baron. Like, as I said before, up top in the show, that is your one-stop destination for all things Action Force. So if you're scratching your heads after this podcast closes and you'd like to know more, yeah, link in the
Would you
description.
like to know more?
Paul, you
Sorry.
said you had questions.
I have questions. Okay, so I want to check something quickly before I step in the mud here. On the Blood for the Baron site, were these originally published in color or were they published in black and white?
This first issue, published in color. But
Okay, cool. Yeah.
if you're seeing subsequent issues that are not colorized, yes, they were not released with color. They have been colorized since. In fact, there was the Blood for the Baron coloring project, which
Yes.
friend of the show, Bart Simon, contributed on.
Okay, no, that's cool because so my first thoughts when I saw this were, and it comes from an art point of view. I love the colors that they use on this, and it's something we sort of touched on about the GI Joe reprints or the rescans in the graphic novels. How the digital coloring flats out. I love how you can see on the Blood for the Baron or on the Battle Action Force pages that Copic markers or watercolors were used to do the coloring, and it looks amazing because you can see the strokes, you can see the texture in it, and it's really awesome. Like I love the clouds or the sky, the texture they use for the sky and how they use negative space for the clouds. It's masterful, keeps the background in the background. It's really, really sexy. And you got some great dramatic coloring happening with the faces because that coloring really enhances the expressions, which brings me to my other favorite thing about this so far, the inking. Absolutely love the inking, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was done, if the artist actually did this as either he went straight in with like some pencil layouts, like loose pencil layouts, and then just inked it all, which I know is kind of a style for a lot of British comics and European comics in general. But it shows, and there's so much great inking happening just in this first issue. And it's insane. It's insanely cool. I mean, I caught an episode of Toy Galaxy the other day, and he was talking about Prince Valiant. And it took me back to when we used to get, well, I don't know if you still get in the newspaper. I haven't picked up a newspaper in years. But I remember when we used to get Prince Valiant in the sort of accompanying magazine that came with our Sunday newspaper. And I used to be in love with the inking style and with the art style. And it was just so cool seeing that on Toy Galaxy. And then reading Battle Action Force a couple of days ago, I was like, wow, this is totally there. It's something that I find to be very European. I mean, you do find it in a lot of American books, but not necessarily always Marvel's stuff. So getting that grit and that texture that comes with the Battle Action Force stuff was a real treat.
And let's waste no further time in crediting the artist responsible for presumably the pencils, inks, and colors. A gentleman called Jim Watson. The letters were by Peter Knight. And this issue was written by Jerry Finley Day, who went on to produce Rogue Trooper for 2000 AD. So he was cutting his teeth on these sort of war stories for battle. And then when he joined 2000 AD, his lasting contribution will, of course, be Rogue Trooper. So you are perhaps seeing all those incorporated elements. I mean, I assume you guys are fans of Rogue Trooper.
Yeah.
There's definitely some crossover between his work on Action Force and just kind of the arbitrariness of the violence at times. It is very truthful. And Rogue Trooper has always had such pathos, really, about violence and about bloodshed and warfare. And yeah, it seems to be a hallmark of Jerry's style, to be honest. And we're seeing it here. The fanatical red shadows are just the consummate, I suppose, baddies. The ultimate, like, disposable enemy. Suicidal. Blindly following their leader with no question. They're, like, dehumanized, man. And the uniforms just sell it.
Oh, yeah. They look very cool. In fact, Black Major has actually just recently done a run of these guys. I think they're called the Red Shadows, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
No? Yes?
I hope they are, because that's what they are.
Okay, no, I'm just, like, listen, I'm like a complete Battle Action Force or Action Force noob. So I'm getting, I mean, I've heard these names thrown around, but I've never really been sure if that was the right thing. But yeah, they've just recently done a bunch of them, and like looking at the toys, looking at the artwork of them, the fact that they're all so well drawn. Every panel, every one of them on every panel is drawn well. They didn't fake it. You know, when they did the art for them. I mean, there's that panel on the first page, just it's on the top right, and there's a little like landing vehicle, and the one dude's in the front, and he's pressing. You know, he's the point man. You got another guy in the foreground, and he's kind of got his arm up, and he's like shouting to them at the back, and he's like, "Shadow track first, second and third waves fan out." You know, and it's just so cool. And it's just such a great like panel. I love that a lot of the panels in this are like little miniature artworks, and it's great to see that.
So true. And you touched on something, the European style. Well, the uniforms of the Red Shadows should be evocative of something. Come on, Mr. Artiste. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to, like, okay, so some of the obvious nods is, yeah, we're touching a lot on Nazi stuff. But then there is a little
You could
bit
just
of
say
Russian
the German
in there.
army of 1930s and 40s. But okay,
Sorry.
you want to drop the N word?
Yeah,
not
sorry,
that
man.
one, the
It's
other
just
one.
like Nazis. No, man, but they do have the sort of Wehrmacht look to them.
Absolutely.
But
Well, there's a reason for that. I mean, Palitoy were masters of getting as much mileage out of molding and tooling as possible, and this is no exception. The ubiquitous look of the Red Shadows is literally the German soldier, then with a kind of a modified head sculpt, some tech in the back of the helmet, and then that really angular facade. I don't know what you'd call it. It kind of, once again, dehumanizes this baddie with the white view slits and just this unhuman looking visage. But yeah, it's absolutely a German soldier uniform.
There's definitely a lot of winning in the designs of a lot of the characters. A lot of the action force. The Red Shadows, I think, are probably the standout for me, at least. But there's also some losers. Like later on in the issue,
Oh,
they
dear.
introduced Muton, the death robot, and like I'm just staring at that head, and I'm like, how did you come up with this? It's so weird.
it's
Like,
so Doctor Who.
it makes sense for the time because I mean, you can kind of see like there's obviously a radio control unit on the top, and it's so non-compact, which it's kind of cool actually. It's so clunky, and yes, it feels very British. It feels like a British villain that you would come up with. It's just. Yeah, he's
Well,
basically
Mr.
a diver when
Palitoy
they kind
himself.
of throw a couple of things on there.
Mr. Palitoy himself, or Bob Breakin, this was his brainchild as a way to reuse a previous toy. And if you were to guess what Muton's original iteration was, like just the function, what do you suppose
I
that
would-
uniform?
I would have thought a deep diver, so like some sort of
Yes.
deep six. Yeah,
Deep sea diver, absolutely.
you
But
just pop a couple of extra things on the head, and it's a completely new thing.
bish bash bosh, so easy. But
Yeah.
do you think the use of Muton as this kind of indestructible robotic menace, is it effective, or is it a bit naff? I don't know. That's an unfair question, perhaps.
I personally love it. Like I
Yeah,
don't,
me
I
too.
never liked it when I saw it as a toy.
Yeah.
But I love it in the comic book. It is so sinister.
Well,
And
the smart thing is that, unlike a battle android trooper, which is, easily sort of pops up and is just as easily dispatched, in this instance, they couldn't just lay into Muton with heavy artillery because he's carrying the doomsday weapon of the issue, of the story. This bomb that is probably capable of wiping out the entire island on which the story takes place. I haven't really done a synopsis, but suffice it to say, Baron Ironblood and his second in command, the Black Major, and the Red Shadows have invaded an island and are threatening it with a weapon that will wipe it out unless a huge sum of money is paid over to them.
$1 billion.
Well, no, the amount is in pounds sterling. Anyways, so Action Force get the call.
10 pounds.
I don't know, what is it, 400 million?
Exchange rates were
pounds?
really strong.
Anywho, Action Force is called in to liberate this island and save the islanders from this bomb detonation. But Muton is the bomb is buried along with Mouton, and once they unearth the bomb, they also unearth this unkillable robot, and now they've got to be, very careful as to how they dispatch him.
Exterminate.
Mm.
Sorry, I can't help myself.
I mean, I think because the stories take up less space than like at least a traditional American comic book. Like the story is very well paced. It's always moving forward, and it feels almost real time. I think it is essentially real time as well. You kind of get the initial setup, and then after that, it's kind of like, okay, how they they infiltrate the island. You get introduced to all the different divisions of Action Force, which is really cool. From the very start, they kind of have already set up. These are the different units. These are the names of their commanders. And then they've even really thrown like a cool backstory for Baron Ironblood's like second in command, the Black Major, who's like an ex-Action Force member, and he's a traitor.
I dig that.
There's intrigue from the very start. It's not just the intrigue and the the suspense of the actual event, of the bomb going to explode, but it's like, oh, interesting. Okay, so there's connections between Action Force and the the major bad guy that they're about to face.
Pun intended. Major bad guy.
Major bad guy.
There's
That's the
also
Fisher-Price version's
historical. Yeah, of course. There's also some historical context to be added to this. So the action plays out on an island, volcanic island, but an island nonetheless, that has a islander population that obviously the United Nations and Action Force are intent on protecting. Action Force is an international team made up from agents from around the world, and that's going to become important in later discussions. And the Red Shadows are these irredeemable baddies. They are not a sovereign nation. But when I was reading the story about essentially a British force liberating an island that had been held by foreign invaders, I immediately thought about the Falklands War, which was a 10-week war between the United Kingdom and Argentina over two islands. I think it may be a group of islands, but anyways, the Falklands was one of them that Argentina had invaded. It was a dependent territory, British dependent territory in the South Atlantic. And this story takes place in the South Atlantic. So I think there's definitely a case of art imitating life here, particularly since the good guys are very much, would be the British point of view, like trying to liberate this island from an invader. That's how things were seen. Anyways, I don't want to riff too much in the history, but like it did ring some bells. I was like, this must have been very prominent in the hearts and minds of kids growing up in England and the United Kingdom, because it would have been all over the news.
And that's kind of cool that it is kind of current to the time it came out in. It's kind of taking its stories from things that happened at the time, and that people can kind of, I suppose, relate to. And it's not just like a completely fantastical idea. It's kind of like the writer was, okay, cool, something interesting happened recently, let's try and riff on that. But overall, it's really cool. And I think, he breaks down the kind of like who these different forces are and their approach to kind of like taking the island. Like, they try and get intel initially, and that's kind of where you learn a little bit more about the Red Shadows and how fanatical they are. Like they'd rather die than actually give information away.
Very Bond trope. The one guy's got a cyanide capsule in his teeth.
Yeah. It's, if you don't kill them, they'll probably...
Which is very Black Hand.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But it's cool how they introduce each force and kind of like who, their arena of expertise, and how they all kind of all work together to solve this mission, or to kind of like win the day out, which I think is, like Space Force has a reason for being there. Like they're not just there because, we want space toys. Space Force is there to be able to deliver the SAS. They're kind of like crack insertion unit. And then Q Force, I think they're called Q Force, is the naval division of Action Force. and they're doing reconnaissance to kind of to get the initial information about the island and how they're going to attack it and get in there.
So
then-
many toys, guys. So many toys.
I can't even imagine trying to collect all of these. I mean, from this, like, everyone just looks really cool, and it's nice that everyone gets a moment to shine. It's not just the SAS, which I would imagine would have been the actual action force. Like, this is the action force, like the SAS. They're the guys who infiltrate and do like the crazy stuff in the mission. But actually, it's all of these guys. Like, the action force is literally a military division. It's its own like military army essentially.
You stopped short of mentioning Z-Force, which is
Z-Force,
sort of
the
bulk
infantry.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a preference? I mean, I think, Rob, I asked you last week, and you said the
I
SAS.
think I said the SAS because they feel the most like GI Joe. Like, they're the most specialized part of all of this. I mean, I imagine because they're doing kind of like the behind the scenes missions. They're kind of like almost like to me they feel like the Black Ops. The guys who go behind the lines to kind of get the mission done. While the rest of the guys feel more like normal army in a way. Even though obviously what all the different divisions are doing is stuff that GI Joe does, but they feel more like general infantry, as it were.
Well, look, in 1982, GI Joe, I think, would probably just have been the equivalent of the Z-Force. They didn't have a space force. They didn't really have a navy. I mean, at all. One might argue, apart from the USS Flag and no one to crew it, except I suppose Keel Hall, Shipwreck, and maybe Deep Six or Cutter blinking at each other. Like, GI Joe still doesn't really have a navy, whereas Action Force sought to cover their bases right from the off. That they weren't just a bunch of guys in green. They had a burgeoning space force, a navy, a clandestine unit, and their sort of main ground infantry unit and mechanized unit. I mean, Z Force also has armor, and I'll say that I'll just point it out because I can never get enough of pointing this out, that the tank driver Steeler is not from Pittsburgh, but in fact from Athens. He's a Greek. Nah.
Yeah, there's from you can see all the different international members. They do kind of like not point them out, but you kind of feel it through the dialogue.
There's a lot of expository stuff. I mean, a lot of this is definitely written to just give info dumps. It's like,
yeah, you're not learning much about the characters. You're just like, oh, and there is the leader of Q Force, Leviathan, who is also very good at shooting very far, or something to that effect.
Yes, his other specialty was gunner's mate or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Code name like Leviathan, I sure hope so.
Paul, do you have a favorite group? You can include the Red Shadows if that's...
Dude, I love the Red Shadows.
The Germans.
I love the Red Shadows. I think they're such cool villains, and I like their look, and I like the way they operate. Action Force makes the Red Shadows as a bad guy seem really villainous, but then also very, like, I want to say sexy in the sense that, they're organized. You don't feel like they're a bunch of dumb guys. You feel like they are, as you mentioned before, fanatical. I feel like sometimes G.I. Joe, I feel like the fanaticism in Cobra Troopers is kind of, we as readers imbue that fanaticism into those characters more than those characters actually bringing it onto the page. Whereas I feel like the Red Shadow guys bring it onto the page a bit more personally.
Look, early Larry and just the early issues of the ARR run did paint Cobra as this fanatical suicide outfit that troopers would sooner die than be taken captive and possibly betray Cobra Command. So I think both of these forces started out with the same brainchild of just being these dehumanized, as I said before, irredeemable baddies. But then I think Larry kind of breathed humanity into Cobra, and the writers on Action Force, either to their credit or not, never did the same with certainly with the rank and file Red Shadows. I mean, you do get to get to grips with Black Major, with Baron Ironblood, with Red Jackal, a little bit of Red Laser. So these characters kind of get fleshed out a little bit more, but definitely the Red Shadows themselves are, they are just meat for the grinder. I mean, the
I also
Baron
think
himself and Black Major, just they just throw troops, away worthlessly. Like they don't seem to have much interest in preservation of their own men's lives. It's cruel stuff.
I gotta say, you mentioned him earlier, but Steeler, the tank driver in this, I
Yes.
really enjoyed him. I love the way the tank action is carried through there. The way he like talks to the tank. If that makes sense.
Well,
Like,
Paulie, if you like Steele's role in this, I will point you in the direction of one of Darren's favorite arcs, if not his favorites, and that would be Desert Strike.
oh,
Yeah. It's got some tank action out in the desert versus I don't know if it strictly speaking takes on a Harrier, but yeah, there's some great action sequences. I mean, guys, if we haven't sold this to you just yet, Battle Action
Wait.
Force is a treasure trove of like great inspiration for your appreciation of these toys and the mythologies surrounding them. Be it GI Joe, be it Action Force, this is a fantastic new jump off point, and it's got such a fresh and different approach. I can't help but draw up a little bit of a list in terms of similarities and differences that just this first issue has with its opposite number from across the pond, that being GI Joe issue number 1. Like on the similarities side, I mean, on a very superficial level, they're both set on an island. Like that's always a very exotic and cool location because it kind of sets your two opposing forces on this very kind of geographically limited piece of land. So you're chucking them into this box together and watching them peck each other's eyes out.
yeah, and there's very little collateral damage as well, thanks to the
Oh,
island.
you say that, but okay, I'll get to the differences, but I'll just quickly fly through the similarities. They both involve a doomsday weapon. I mean, in Operation Lady Doomsday, it's more the idea of a weapon that Adele Burkhart, if she spills the beans to Cobra, this is some bad shit that could be unleashed on the world. Whereas here, we have a situation where if Action Force don't save the day, the whole island goes up because there's already a live ticking, doomsday weapon on the island itself. Anyways, they both introduce loads of personnel and equipment. They both end in a kind of a self-destruct trope. They both end with the big baddies getting away, and they get away in a similar fashion. But in the differences category, I'm gonna say that in spite of me loving this issue, Larry had a far more memorable scripting style. He had humor, he had levity, he had a very defined idea of who each of the original 13 were in terms of what kind of character traits they added to the team. Even if they only had one line of dialogue, I think Larry had a firm idea of like, okay, this is the hothead of the group. This is the muscle of the group. This is the street smarts guy. This is the young wet behind the ears guy. This is the commando. Whereas all the characters in the Action Force issue are kind of painted with the same brush. The heroes are heroic. The villains are villainous. There isn't much room for like character moments. Would you agree?
I would, yeah, because when you asked me which is my favorite team, just without looking, yeah, but without having to look at the comic book and I didn't have a knee-jerk reaction. I was kind of like, Q Force, Z Force, SAS, okay, hold on, just that, which character, what's that character's name now? All that kind of stuff. Like I had problems with that and the only one that stood out for me was Steeler because I felt that he had given me the most personality other than the villains.
He calls his tank goddess.
Come, my goddess.
I love that, man. I think that's so cool and such a Mick thing as well. But yeah, that so I would agree with you on those points because I didn't immediately have a familiarity with the characters, whereas I know in GI Joe, even though yes, I know who these characters are, we did get to know them a little bit better. You know, we did get some, if memory serves, because I need to read the first one again. I haven't read it in a while. But
Look, in this
yeah.
story, it's an absolute bluster through a lot of figurines and equipment. But I will say this much to Battle Action Force's credit. They do a number of character focus issues. So if you had a favorite figure, chances are like there's a Battle Action Force storyline, even if it was a short one. Some of them are long, like the Black Major gets a very lengthy, devoted plot line that runs over a number of issues. Some of them are shorter, but chances are you get that character focus later on, which is something that I think GI Joe, Larry played to his favorites. We all know that, and if your favorite wasn't within that kind of, I don't know, closed list, you got the barest of lip services. So there's a great deal of equity amongst characters in Battle Action Force because, well, read on, dear friends, and as I say, if you do play favorites, chances are you might be lucky. You'll get some dedicated stuff.
So I got a theory about Battle Action Force and Action Force in general. Okay. So one of the most popular things on TV around that time was also the Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet. I think it's Captain Scarlet. And some of the
Does
other
Space Force give you big Thunderbirds vibes?
I get big
Yeah.
Thunderbird vibe. I get Jerry Anderson vibes from this whole comic book.
So
there's
the artist on this was also an artist on the novelization, or not the novelizations, the comic books for Thunderbirds, for Captain Scarlet.
Interesting. It's probably because he's so good at drawing like mechanical stuff. Like you get the sense of the detailing of the tanks, even the fantastical stuff like Red Laser's Red Laser.
Which is the hell. Did you notice?
yes, that I did
Yes.
The
notice,
GI
yeah.
Joe hell,
And it's
done in
drawn so
red.
well.
It's
Painted red.
beautifully done. Yes, so artist Jim Watson, we salute you, sir. Rest in peace. He's no longer with us, I'm afraid. But yeah, brilliant work.
And also the style of storytelling. Okay, so now here's the like you sort of smashed this a little bit in my mind, but it's something I'm still thinking about. That's still sort of making sense to me. I kind of feel like, and wow, I kind of feel like the Sunbow cartoon actually has a lot to thank Action Force, because I think there's a lot of style that goes into the Sunbow cartoon that comes from Action Force. And I say this only because I'm reading Action Force now, after the fact, after having read GI Joe and watched GI Joe as a Sunbow show. I just can't help but feel that there's so much fuel here for the cartoon. Like it's almost like a lot of the style for the cartoon comes from this style of storytelling in these books. Now, maybe that's just a big leap, but it is just something I feel about it. It just sort of makes more sense. It feels, I don't know, it just feels more like a cartoon.
Look, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that Sunbow writers might have picked up a rag if they crossed the channel, or crossed the Atlantic, I should say. But I'm gonna say the smart money is probably on the fact that like Dixon and Dilly, I don't think those guys ever read Battle Action Force.
Yeah, then maybe it's just a stylistic thing for the time then, as well.
Yeah. Well, expand on that, Paul. What gives you the Sunbow vibe here? The brevity of it, the fact that it's like quite.
It's just that like, it's just that in this first issue we've got a land force, a sea force, and space like happening in the same like issue, which is very much a Sunbow thing and not very much a GI Joe comic thing. In GI Joe comic, they would normally have like the build up to something, and then you would get it in the next issue, them going to space or doing something. This all feels very compressed into, it feels like this could be very well compressed into a 30-minute, let's call it toy commercial, but those shows were a bit more than that. But it just feels like that for me. The way that they introduce characters and their specialties, the way they show the vehicles off, that kind of stuff. It just almost feels like Action Force just created more of a template for the cartoon, or more of a template that would work. And maybe that was the style, of the time going forward. Maybe that's, maybe when they did Action Force, maybe they got some samples of what they were doing for the adverts, for the comic book, which were animated. Maybe they saw that and felt, okay, maybe that's the kind of way we have to do this comic book. Maybe British comics are just better at doing that kind of storytelling, or they understand that market differently,
Look, I'm going to say it's probably the latter, because this does definitely feel like it's written in the mold of all the kind of the war story comic books of the time that were coming out of the UK, except now it's populated with characters that you can actually buy plastic incarnations of. And that's my happy place, boys. Something whimsical that I want to draw your attention to. What did you guys think of sound effects use in the comic?
There weren't really any sound effects. I think the only sound effect is when someone screams when they're dying, and it's always "Aye."
Okay, so the answer to my question is, or my trick question is, there are no sound effects. Everything is if you're seeing it, it's text. That is speech that is coming out of someone's mouths, even if it is "Aye." Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think the explosions happen often like a big
your
focus
mind.
of in your mind, but like the big focus of an action thing happening, or an explosion where you would have sound effects the panel itself is exploding. I think it's on the second or third page. You showed it earlier, where the tank crashes into the laser.
Ooh.
And that is a focal point, or even like that's a hectic focal point right there. It's just like you can just feel the sound effect in your head.
Ooh,
And
that was a
even
good
just
sound effect, Rob. Can you do that again?
I mean,
Awesome.
it's fantastic. I mean, and there's lots of action going on. I suppose there's so much action that you can't sound effect everything. I mean, even just a couple of panels above that, there's a car or something blowing up in the background of the people talking. It's just, this is war. It's happening.
Z-Force Jeep. I've got the
Yeah.
AF3 version of that. Lovely
And
gift from my
people are
man
dead.
Jim.
There's dudes that are dead in that thing right there.
Yeah, this definitely ain't your Saturday morning cartoon. So yes, this
Yeah,
is
it's
a
your
point that
Sunday
I've made
morning strip.
several times.
Sorry.
Hard stories. This is a point, an X that I've ground a lot anytime I've had the opportunity to do so on Talking Joe, for instance. And that's, I really admire the restraint of not using onomatopoeia or sound effects on comic book pages, because yes, we do create the sounds in our minds, and filling a page or filling artwork or covering up artwork with rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat, blam 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 is giving away vital art real estate with something
Yeah,
that, as I say, your mind creates.
I think
And then
it's
my
the same.
final nail in the
Yeah.
coffin. Sorry, Rob. I'm gonna
No.
wrap this up by saying that modern comic books are the reason I am pissed off with sound effects. Because back in the day, the sound effects they'd be integrated into the art. In fact, I'm pretty sure the penciler was responsible for creating them. It wasn't something that was. But in modern comics, it's an overlay. It's done afterwards, and oftentimes the text itself is jarring. It doesn't fit the art style. It's not vectored correctly, or it's distracting in ways that it sets itself apart because it is a digital overlay on comic book art that is attempting to be traditional comic book art. It's probably done digitally anyways, but it still is attempting to be the old school style of art, and yet you've got this very obvious overlay of digital text to put in the sound effects, and it's done in cool like colors, or like it has an ombre or sort of a fade to it. Paul, you can help me out with the terminology, but like it just is a visual distraction to me. So here we have an example of just not needing them at all. And actually, I don't mind it. I don't even notice their absence. I, in fact, applaud their absence. I see a muzzle flash and I'm like, yes, of course it's going rat-a-tat-a-tat.
Don't have to draw attention to it. I think an interesting parallel would be to the use of laugh tracks in sitcoms in America, where initially there was obviously a purpose for it. There was a reason for putting it in there, but it kind of got to a point where every other line that came out of a character's mouth was greeted by a laugh track, even when the lines themselves were not necessarily funny. I think probably the biggest offender of that in modern day television would be Big Bang Theory, where it's constantly hitting you with that laugh track. Where I think there was initially a purpose for it. There was a reason for it. It was kind of like, kind of draw attention to the laugh, the gag. But a comedy or television stories, I mean, there are still TV shows that use laugh tracks, but they use it sparingly, or they move completely away from it, where they just leave it completely up to because of the way the stories are told, the jokes are set up, it's up to the audience themselves to find something funny and to realize it is funny. So I think that's also a way in which comic books kind of, there's obviously very much a reason for the sound effects on the pages. I mean, they're often integrated into the artwork, as Stephen said, but now they're just there because we've always done sound effects, so we can't not have sound effects in our comic books. At least in the mainstream Western comic books produced, in America, say by DC and Marvel, they still do it because it's the way it's done. While Battle Action Force from the very start took its own kind of tack, did the British thing, and just was like, you decide for yourself how you want to hear these things.
British thing, isn't it?
Well, it's very sparing, which, I mean, and it's very to the point. I mean, the entire story, the way that they're telling the stories is very compact. It's they need to get through this, not need to get through it, but they need you to focus on what they, read the words, look at this amazing art that we have here, and enjoy the story. You can figure out the sound effects for yourself.
Well, it was a debut issue, and of course it had a huge clip to it. It was very brisk storytelling. It set up the pieces, and hopefully, if we've done our job right, it set you, dear listener, on a path to reading a little bit more Battle Action Force if you haven't already pored over these stories. And if you have, write us and tell us your favorites. And maybe, just maybe, GI Joburg will, in the very near future, do another review like this.
Yeah, why not? I'm very excited to keep going.
Oh, goody, Rob.
If people have issues that they want to suggest that we read and review, I'll definitely do that. Why not?
Good.
And it also it's interesting because it's from the very start there were different versions of GI Joe. I mean, obviously there's always been the difference between the cartoon and the comic books, but there's also a difference in different countries. The GI Joe itself is a very varied base on which you can kind of build and tell your own stories in, which I think is really cool. And kind of, at least in my mind, lends a little bit more legitimacy to other versions of the shows. Like the A-Team version, the Renegades, which I think is actually kind of cool and kind of opens up me to being a little bit, I suppose, a little less critical of like other versions of these characters.
Hang on, have you been watching the Renegades?
I haven't, but remembering what the Renegades was, I don't have access to any of the Renegade stuff.
Well, it's currently free and live on YouTube.
Oh, fascinating.
They have it going 24/7, which is a question I put to you guys and got no response, unfortunately. How do we make GI Joburg run 24/7?
You can't. What you do is you just have a playlist that is always available. That's all. Because you're seeing it as a 24-hour thing, but it's actually not really 24 hours. It's just there. It's just running on their
It could be
page.
it's like a live. It's a live broadcast or something. I don't know. This technical stuff confuses me. We're gonna have to just be live forever, essentially. So you just play your videos on a live stream. I've seen it on other
Basically-
channels. I mean, there's this, and there's a couple of other channels that I've seen where they do run
All the
their
retro
videos
wave
constantly.
channels
Oh,
do it
absolutely.
as
New
well.
retro wave,
Mm.
lo-fi, hip-hop, Hasbro with their GI Joe cartoons, and I'm sure they do My Little Pony and everything else. There's like an
Transformers as
anime
well.
channel that I stumbled onto on YouTube the other day, that is also like just wall-to-wall streaming. So I wanted to basically just put up all our play motions as part of an endless playlist on loop. So anyone who just kind of wanted something on in the background and see some action figures flopping around in my hands would have access to that. But I suppose anyone could just go to the playlist, but it's far more inviting for YouTube to say to you, hey, GI Joburg is live right now, and they're just playing their
And you
best
just- you
hits
just go check
over
it
and
out.
over and over and over again. So, damn it. If anyone knows how I can set that up, that'd be great. It probably has to go through StreamYard and all that shit, but whatever,
No,
man.
I'm sure we can figure
I'm
it out.
inspired by Hasbro. That's like-
Hasbro has finally inspired you. Fantastic. Unlike some
Yeah.
of their other recent fluffs, I guess.
All right.
What, you mean
we have a response from Darren. He would love us to review all of the Battle Action Force stories.
Okay, then. Starting next
Fine,
week.
you twisted our arm. Ugh.
Here we go. But if you have a top 3, Darren, I think that would probably be more realistic. That's a lot of reading.
It's 92 issues. It's going to take us from here to episode 300 and something. We can do it.
Just should we reach into the mailbag? Paul, do you still have some sob stories you want to tell us?
I don't want to call them sob stories, but yes, I do have one or two.
Those sad sex stories. Oh,
I-
gosh.
Terrifying.
You guys are terrible. No, man, I have got one or two. I think there were even one or two that were added to Facebook post our episode. But on the last episode we left off on MCDJ ACDC. So, haha, I did that without looking. I'm getting good at this. Yeah, so I'd like to read his submission quickly from Patreon.
Weird. In the meantime, I've got still got some great wish list items from our friends and fans out there. Cody Scalf, for 2021, he would love to pick up a Terradrome. Good luck, pal. The Checkpoint Alpha, that's way more achievable. Tiger Force Outback, yeah, dipping into the Grail territory again. Night Raven, you could find that, but you can.
Actually, I know a local guy with a Night Raven. If he's
That's
looking.
not going to help our friend in the United States. Damn you, Paul, for dangling that carrot.
No, well,
And number
I'm
5,
just saying,
guys, have you ever heard of the Adventure Team escape car?
Not offhand.
It's like a go-kart for the big boys, for the 12-inch guys. So, Cody, you're going to have to elaborate why you want this particular vehicle. Is it somehow adaptable to 3 3/4-inch Joe, or are you a 12-inch collector on the side? Are you cheating on your little guys?
Cheater.
Cheater. Glenn Peak of the Peak Clan, who sired those 4 sons who make the most awesome play motion submissions. He would love to get the Cobra Transport plane, or this is his sort of mythical G.I. Joe stuff. The Cobra Transport plane with the snake head in front. Yeah. Paul, you'd like that too, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, no, I'd love it. Give me 2.
Massive. Snake Eyes version 1 or 1.5. Okay, so that exists. Terradrome, that exists. Mauler and a USS flag, plus room for it. Yeah, I think that makes it 6 items, my friend.
That's a clever caveat, though.
Yeah, look,
Plus
it's
room
always,
for it.
there are those like internet questions that go around, like saying, what would you rather have, like a personal chef all your life, or $1 million, or no, not $1 million. Anyways, one of the options is the house to always be cleaned, like you never have to do any house cleaning. And I always select that one because I'm like, well, that's the only option that comes with a house.
That's so clever. But don't they always have like some kind of like rule, like you can have this in your life as long as you go down on like
hell? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mephistopheles or whatever. Who's the guy who sold his soul? Whatever.
Yeah, I think it is
Faust.
Mephistopheles.
It's Faust. That's it.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Anyway,
eh,
anyway,
very, very timely.
I've got that.
Darren's wish list. Forgive me if I have actually mentioned this if you posted it on Facebook, but I mean on Patreon. But things that does exist: the USS Flag, the Cobra Rattler, a complete whale. Ouch with those veins. A Vacation in the Shadows convention set. Yes, yes, yes. This one had the O-ring, Red Shadows figures, plus a Flint, plus a Black Major that was in Bison.
Ooh.
But still, they're very hard to get. They are very coveted. And then the fantasy wish list is a classified Red Shadow, classified Iron Grenadier, Castle Destro, the Arbico Valdez, the Cobra Transport Helicopter. Yes, I did read those out already, but worth mentioning again. The Arbico Valdez, I forget. Oh, yes, that was in the Destro Must Die storyline, I think. It had like hurricanes, like Cobra VTOLs. It was like a tanker that was converted to hold Cobra aircraft. Very cool. Paul, take it away.
Cool. Are we ready? Sweet. Rock and roll. Okay. August 1986. My family and I were moving to Europe for my father's job. With everything packed up and ready to go, I was super excited about living in Europe for the second time. Due to shipping and moving regulations, I could only ship either my Joes or Transformers. Thus, one had to go in temporary storage. So as fate would have it, I chose to take those robots in disguise versus a bunch of heroes and evil terrorists. I was told that I could bring with me a couple of Transformers in my personal bag to have with me when I got to Europe, due to the shipping of the other items taking a few months to arrive. I chose Transformers to put in my carry-on bag, and they were G1 Bluestreak, Smokescreen, Hound, and Hoist. The movers came and went the next day. I could not find those three Transformers. Of course, being a child and in panic, my mother stated, "Don't worry, maybe they got packed up with the other items and you'll see them in a couple of months once we get settled overseas." A couple of months went by and we received our household goods, unpacked them, and you know the rest of the story already. Those three Transformers were stolen by the movers. And long gone at this point, bastards. As a child, I was devastated. It was the end of 1986. Shame. And those three characters were nowhere to be found in stores. Sadly, as we all know, there was no eBay or other go-to internet websites for those collecting hobbies. Even as a child, with unbelievable faith and luck, believing when we returned to the United States 4 years later, I hoped that somehow they were packed and in storage with my GI Joes. As Lady Luck would not have it, she did not care for me at all, and those beloved robot heroes were not with my Joes, which were all okay, despite being in storage for 4 years. At least the story has a happy ending, as when eBay first came on the scene, I quickly replaced those missing in action Transformer characters stolen from my childhood collection first thing. On a funny sidebar note, being paranoid about those particular Transformers in 2003, when Hasbro had the Toys R Us commemorative edition series, I quickly acquired another Bluestreak, Smokescreen, and Hoist yet again. Wow, it sounds like I mean, it's horrible when you like have three of your favorite characters disappear. That really sucks. But, you know, to weigh it all up, at least it was just those three. But maybe that turned you into a collector, dude. I don't know.
He
a
bought
feeling.
them and bought them again just to be safe. And I can connect with that because let me tell you, once again, when eBay became an avenue to get vintage toys, Zartan was very in my crosshairs. And when I did the research, because you know I was learning a whole lot about GI Joe all at once when I should have been studying at the UCT library, University Library. Anyways, I learned to my horror that Zartan's torso halves were fused. So that Zartan that was winging its way to me from overseas would have a limited lifespan. Like once that O-ring is shot, I was like, oh geez, do I then have to break my Zartan? I wasn't aware of ways to separate those torso halves safely. So I immediately ordered a second one because I was like, I've got to have one to play with and one to hopefully preserve the rubber of. But yeah, rubber will give out when rubber gives out. Thank you for the story. I'm glad it had a happy ending.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
but
goodness.
we've
But I mean,
got-
that initial touch. I mean, oh god,
It's a gross
the
feeling.
initial
that-
part, just like yeah.
I mean, I used to have
Bastards.
that sometimes when I got home, man. Like, I'd get home and a figure like a Ninja Turtle toy that I had that I was playing with that I'd put in a specific space wouldn't be there, and I'd be like, I left it there, you know. And I'd look. In fact, it was actually Leonardo, and I was looking throughout the whole house for Leonardo, everywhere, and I couldn't find it, and I asked Eunice, and she was like, "No, she doesn't know." And then I showed her one of the other turtles just to, just show her this is the one that I'm looking for, but it's just blue. And she's like, "Okay, no, she'll keep an eye out, whatever." So I'm looking. Anyway, so I eventually gave up, and then the next day, it sort of like turned up, in the house somewhere, and I was like, "Huh, that's weird." And I'm lucky I got my Leonardo back. But then also another figure I had, which was the Rat King. Also, same thing, couldn't find it anywhere. And one day I'm walking home from school, and it's the weirdest thing, dude. I'm walking home, and instead of cutting through the felt like we normally did, we actually went through the whole street. Because I
the
just
bush
decided,
or the field for
yeah, the
non-South
bush.
Africans.
Sorry, yeah, like it's now a park, but and I decided, no, I actually wanted to go down the road and then take a right. I actually wanted to walk down the road instead of going through the bush for that day. I don't know, through the felt field, whatever. And in the window, I saw a Rat King toy of one of my neighbors. Now, this was before we had these big walls, in front of our houses. And I saw this Rat King figure sitting in the window. And I was like, no, that can't be my Rat King. And it was actually, one of my dogs had managed to get hold of it. So he had a little bit of a bite mark on the arm. So I thought, nah, let me go and have a look. And it was, sure as shit, it was that Rat King. And I immediately told Eunice. I was like, Eunice, because she was an adult. And I was like, Eunice, you need to speak to these people. Somehow they have my Rat King. Anyway, and she was like, she didn't want to like argue with me about it. She actually went and did it, which I was like, what? And then I got my Rat King back. And I told my dad about that, and he thought it was really strange. And then, as you guys know from the last episode, and this woman was actually like sneaking shit out of my house and selling it to people. So she had obviously sold it to these people here because that's where their domestic lady was obviously staying on site, and that was the domestic lady's room, and she was keeping it on the window. So now I feel terrible
world,
because she obviously got it for her child. I mean, it was just up the road from my house. It wasn't like really that far. She obviously got it for her child, and now like I want my toy back. So now this poor kid also got it back from school, and he saw his toys gone, and he must have been like really upset. So anyway, moving right along, we got another story in the email.
Oh, my friend, let's shift focus from the sob stories ever so slightly, because guess who's back? It's Falcon and Crazy Legs.
Hey.
Oh,
Come on, Crazy Legs, you drive it. What do you think, I'm crazy? Well, actually, yes, I do. No. I'm not driving that thing. I don't drive 12-wheeled things through the swamp. That's just so stinky and yucky. Yeah? Well, who else is gonna do it? I don't know. Maybe Muskrat or that ninja guy. Snake Eyes? No, the other one. Storm Shadow? Yeah, that guy. Whose team is he on anyway? He's on our team. This sounds like a job for GI Joburg. Who do you think the best person would be to drive the Swamp Masher? Yeah, who's most qualified to drive it? And better yet, who would look best driving it?
It's got to be sci-fi, right? That's just neon green overload. I don't know, gents. Who's best qualified to drive a Swamp Masher? What?
He definitely would suit it. I mean, the color scheme is right on the money. It's tough. It has to be a character from the 90s, though, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's my feel too. Like,
Look, if you like contrast, Ice Cream Soldier, your favorite, Rob, has a fabulous Lumo orange and yellow ensemble. So that offsets the neon green and deep purple of the Swamp Masher quite nicely.
Dude,
I don't
Or
know,
you could
man.
completely embrace it and do Ozone, but like his
Starboard
his
version.
environment
Blue
version. No, the blue helmeted version.
The blue one.
I think the blue
Oh.
one, because I mean that's a nice contrast. The kind of like the green and the purple, and he's like all sitting blue in the middle there.
I buy
'Cause they
it.
did a
The
bunch of
Swamp
Ozones.
Masher looks like
Eco
it
Warrior.
can go into, well, it wouldn't offer any protection, and that's where Ozone's own suit comes into play. But at least
Yeah.
in terms of like a hostile environment, it's got those crazy wheels that can just kind of, I don't know, mount anything.
Yeah,
That's a
you'll be
good call,
churning up
Rob.
all that radioactive stuff. You should turn it up. It's been fantastic.
It's a good question. Very good question. Like such a left field question because yes, the Swamp Masher, like any other basic vehicle that didn't include a driver, is gonna get you asking the question, "Who the hell am I putting in it?" And most people default to Muskrat because they were released the same year. Essentially, they both operate in swamps. But if you wanted to think a little bit out the box,
But I think an EcoForce guy would be a good choice because it is a vehicle that you can get in anywhere. You can, if there's some sort of ecological problem, you need to be able to get in as quickly as possible, I suppose, and be able to solve it before things get really out of hand. I think an EcoForce, you can turn it into EcoForce vehicle, definitely.
there were a number of instances where the Swamp Masher was promoted alongside Toxo Viper. Yeah, a few catalog images. We reviewed one on this channel. The Benelux catalog had this beautiful spread with the Swamp Masher, and I can't remember who was driving it, but they were definitely coming into contact with Toxo Vipers.
It almost feels like Toxo Viper should be the driver. I mean, their color schemes are exceptionally similar. The green and the purple once again. It debuted on the wrong team.
Then that begs the question, should the Swamp Masher have been a GI Joe vehicle at all? Isn't this something that screams Cobra?
I don't know.
I was actually going to say, what about Pathfinder, dude? I think Pathfinder is perfect for the Swamp Masher.
He would actually work for it too.
No,
I would
'cause
agree
I
with
tell
you,
you,
Paul, except I'm now stuck on the idea of the Swamp Masher being some kind of freaky deaky hostile environment Toxo vehicle.
I just like Pathfinder because it makes sense. Because you could Pathfinder could use the Swamp Masher, go into places, and if things get stuck in its treads, Pathfinder's got the tools to remove that.
That's true because these things definitely do look like stuff would get stuck in them.
Yeah, that or maybe the Swamp Masher is just like a gardening vehicle that's been added a gun to it. So maybe Pathfinder's just hey, he has little races outside the GI Joe HQ, Sunbow HQ lawn or something. He's out there. He's yeah, this is amazing. And if Cobra attacks, he can shoot back. It's great. I don't know, but it just seems like a vehicle that Pathfinder sort of works with in my mind.
Ta-da! I'm now sharing my screen, and yes, it is Blocker riding that Swamp Masher, and it's Blaster, the hovercraft pilot on the back. They look kind of good. Crazy Legs and Falcon, I think I have my answer. The Swamp Masher looks good with a pair of BF2K guys riding it.
I'm going to go full EcoForce. BF2K.
I thought Steve was about to say it looks like a good with a pair of boobs. I don't know why I thought that. I'm gonna stick with Pathfinder. I think Pathfinder works really, really well for that.
Heck yeah! I'd say anyone
Who's on the gun?
EcoForce. Eco Warriors.
Also Pathfinder because most people have doubles now. No,
give that figure
It's
away.
Pathfinder.
I've never been a Pathfinder fan, and I don't know if I'll ever bring myself to own one.
I would pop Falcon. I think Falcon would be on the gun, and then Ozone driving, or maybe the other way around.
I actually kind of like the idea of that. That there's that one Eco Warriors figure, but it's I think it's meant to be Deep Six, but it's based on that. They got the square heads with the glass faces. They look kind of creepy. Yeah, the green one. I think I'm not sure who that's meant to be. But I feel like he would look good on there because also if you're gonna sit on the back and you're the gunner on the Swamp Masher, I would be wearing a helmet. I'd actually want to wear a wetsuit and a helmet because you're gonna get splodged with mud and twigs and bugs, and it's gonna be mad. So I'd rather just have something with a nice windscreen on it.
And also, you don't want people to know that you're driving this thing around, so you want to be anonymous while driving it.
Yeah, nobody wants to look at you and go, oh, by the way, I saw you in the Swamp Masher, and you're like, no, you didn't.
Oh, nope, that wasn't me.
I was in the bathroom. I was doing KP duty.
So the chats have a great little thread going at the moment, and that's the Swamp Masher with its epically Decepticon colors, that being the purple and the Lumo green, lime green. It just needs a
Devastator match?
Decepticon logo. Exactly, it's the Constructicons, right?
Yes, that
and
would work.
in the late 80s, there was that non-transforming line of Transformers called Action Masters, and yes, they did do a Devastator. Basically a non-transforming, almost 3 3/4 inch O-ring construction, with a T-hook and everything, Transformer. I think it had O-ring construction. It might have just been a T-hook, but I do recall it sharing a lot of similarities with GI Joe of the time. So while I don't think you could get that Devastator's legs into the Swamp Masher, which is a very fiddly arrangement, he could certainly man the gun, and that would be very, very fitting.
He would definitely fit in there.
All right, gents. What else remains to be discussed? I think we've come to the end of another delightful chat, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, we'll save some of our collection that was stories for the next episode then. I think that'd be cool.
Thanks
sure.
again for joining us, gents, in the chats, in the live studio audience. It's always a treat to have some interaction as we do this thing. Thank you, Paul.
Keeps us on
for
our
suggesting
toes,
it.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's a
Keeps us
pleasure.
from straying too far or saying the wrong things. So thank you.
Ooh.
Got our fact checkers. Yep.
Also, I would just like to take a second to welcome Bob. He's our new Berg Force
Bob.
member on
Welcome,
the
Bob.
Patreon. Welcome, Bob.
You.
We're so glad to have you, dude. Thank you for your support. It's much appreciated. And by extension, thank you to the support of our Berg Force, to everybody that has supported or continues to support the GI Joburg Patreon, the Berg Force. We love you guys. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Also, whoever bought merch last week or 2 weeks ago, thank you very much as well. I just saw on my analytics, somebody got themselves some cool new t-shirts and merchandise.
Heck yeah.
That was great to see. If you want to have some cool merchandise, check it out. We have a link in the description below alongside the Patreon link, so you can either join the Patreon, get some merch, or do both. And while you're at it, you might as well just hit that bell if you haven't already. We know you have, so you might as well just like the video. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for the support. I thought I'd quickly show you guys something that's happening on my screen.
What is that, Paul? That looks like some original Action Force artwork.
It is, yeah. I just thought it'd be fun to do for the banner quickly while we were chatting. So it's just a quick sketch.
You knocked it out so quick, and it's perfect because of the limited color scheme as well.
Yeah, I try to keep it simple. So
Okay, for our listeners, if you do have a way to see the thumbnail to this episode, take a little look-see. Paul has, in the time we have been chatting, knocked out some Red Shadows artwork with a very strapping Baron Ironblood in the middle. And, I mean, sure, it's rough, but damn it, bro, it looks like... I mean, it's great. It's great.
thanks, man. Yeah, I figured it would be nice.
I don't know how you'd improve upon this if you did have a bit more time.
I don't
Yeah.
don't do anything else to it. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it as is. Yeah, I'm just going to try and think of something cool for the background. But yeah, that's going to be the banner for this episode. So
Heck
That's
yeah.
Bravo.
shot, guys. And then
He really is an artist, guys. It's
oh my word,
And
you
you
guys are
not
say
so
kidding
you've never
here.
done. You say you've not done sequential.
What
art,
before?
but I mean, you've just knocked this out in color, no less. I mean, this isn't just it's not just raw pencils. Like, it's done.
It's finished. This is
Oh,
put a
yeah.
pop little background in there. He could definitely do a comic book. I think hour and a half maybe for a panel. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
could
saying.
maybe do it. I know the people to speak to see if I can if I feel brave, I know who to speak to. I mean, I
Look.
know a very nice guy by the name of Sean Isaacs. He does some amazing
Hey.
comic book work. He's working on Avengers and stuff currently. So
heck yeah.
yeah. So you're
Good
gonna
man.
say,
Paul,
Steve?
if given more time, what would you do to this artwork?
Oh, I would. Okay, well, for starters, I would just maybe tighten up the line work just a little bit, just ink it a bit better, give it a bit more tone, give it a bit more detail in certain areas. Not like a lot, But I'd pretty much keep it
I
at
see
that
you've got
style.
highlights. You've got highlights on the red shadows, but Baron's kind of
Yeah, I've,
He's in the
yeah.
foreground though, because the explosion is on the sides and it's not touching him.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I'll tone it a bit differently, just a bit more accurately, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's what I would do. I'd also like, I mean, this is just like a very quick style. I try to actually tune it up a little bit more, to be honest. But I wasn't quite getting the feel that I wanted. I think what happened is I got stuck on those red shadow helmets, and I really wanted to get them to look right.
you gave them a
So-
little bit of extra greebly. Yeah.
Yes.
I like it
Yeah.
because let's be honest, like the kind of I don't know the swoop of it in the traditional toy and in the artwork, it isn't human. It needs a little bit more of a chin. So yeah, bravo, man.
Shot, dude.
I like this. So yes, if you are listening to this and scratching your heads, there's a very simple way to check it. Hopefully your pod player uses our thumbnails, but otherwise, just check out the YouTube version. Skip right to
Thanks.
I don't know 1 hour 35, and you'll see it.
Heck,
Anyways,
and
I've
then-
enjoyed this immensely. Thank you for making my night, boys.
you're
rock and
welcome.
roll, man.
Thanks for making our weekends.
Yo,
Yeah.
Joburg, everybody.
Yo, Joe.
Oh, and for the Bogue Force, check out your mail. Sorry, like you'll be getting little messages from me individually. It won't be a bulk message with a little
Aw.
surprise in it. So keep an eye open for that. That's going to happen over the next 3 weeks. That is going to happen. So if you don't see anything this week, please don't be sad or anything. It means that it's probably still down the line for you. Okay, cool.
And if you would
So,
like to get hold of the show, send us your thoughts at arealsouthafricanhero@gmail.com, or just hit the link in the description below. And Rob, if they want to spam you, how do they get hold of you specifically?
Well,
Most elusive member.
I'm sometimes on Twitter. I'm sometimes on Instagram. No clarity here. That's one word. No clarity here. You can
At
try
him,
and
guys.
message
At
me,
him. He
and
loves it. He loves
hopefully,
it.
hopefully I'll reply. I'm because I receive so few messages. I tend not to even know where to check for messages.
Well, you're about to be very popular now. Watch out. That spam folder. You're going to have to
Watch
accept
out.
some
I'm gonna
new-
look.
some
I'm gonna
new
look.
requests.
Okay.
Alright.
It depends on the picture, you know. Like if it looks like a spammy picture, I'm definitely not gonna. Natasha just followed you and likes all 5 of your pictures.
Wow.
Join my
How long is
private
the
group.
How long has Natasha been on Instagram? A week.
A couple hours now.
Or
Or
like
week.
a whole 3 followers.
Mhm.
But,
But
yeah,
yes.
guys, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
216. We started our journey with the Baron Ironblood and his blood, and it's gonna flow.
Later.